Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Interesting topic I wanted to cover today. It's something I wanted to talk about for a while, but just never got around to it until now. I finally have a vintage Louis Vuitton piece and a relatively new-ish Louis Vuitton piece. It's a couple years old. I wanted to talk about when I would choose to buy vintage versus when I would choose to still buy new, without price in consideration. I think a lot of people are now looking to buy everything pre-loved because of the price point that everything is right now. And I definitely do understand where that's coming from. But even in the pre-loved market, there's just so many different items available. If you're new to buying luxury, or specifically Louis Vuitton, which is what I'm covering today, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I wanted to kind of tell you about my reasons why I would go for a vintage piece versus a newer model, even in the pre-loved market, in hopes that this will be helpful for you if you're shopping Louis Vuitton in the pre-loved market as like a new-ish buyer. So I hope you guys find this video helpful and enjoyable. And I have recently started a membership program on my channel. I didn't even know it was something that I could do for my channel, where I'll be covering a lot of vintage and pre-loved finds. I'm just on my phone so much shopping, and I see good deals all the time that I can't believe that people haven't taken advantage of. So I'll be covering a lot of that on my paid membership part of my channel. So if you're interested, I will be leaving some information about that down below in my description box. So with that said, let's get started with the comparison. So as I mentioned, I'm taking the price out of the equation because, as you can imagine, bags that are in a better condition are going to be priced more expensively versus bags that are in a worse condition are going to be priced at a much lower price point. But if the price point is similar, how would I choose whether to buy vintage versus whether to buy a newer model? That's what I will be focusing on, without price being the top primary decision factor. So as I talk through some of these talking points, I thought it would be helpful for you to show my vintage piece and my newer model piece. Here's my vintage Speedy 25. This is the Petite Noe new model. I bought this directly from the online boutique. And there are reasons why I decided to go for a vintage piece versus a new. So I'll walk through that thought process with you guys now, but thought to kind of give you guys a little bit of eye candy. So first things first, there's definitely a huge difference in terms of materials that are used to make Louis Vuitton bags now. If you guys didn't know, Louis Vuitton completely revamped their canvas right around, I think, 2017. I bought my Neverful in 2017 that was still made with the old canvas, versus some of the older 2017 models were already being rolled out with the revamped canvas version. And the main difference between the older canvas and the new canvas is like the malleableness of the canvas and the thickness. So if you look at the vintage Speedy, you'll be able to kind of feel, you have to see it in person, but it's much less pliable. It has a lot more structure to the canvas. And it's, I think, thicker. Whatever they did with the older canvases make the canvas a lot more structured, versus the newer canvas is a lot more malleable and pliable. As you can see, it can be scrunched up really well, and it doesn't have as much structure to it. And my best guess as to why Louis Vuitton made this change is that cracking in the canvas is a very common issue with the vintage pieces they used to do. So it doesn't happen a lot with the Speedies because this is a bag that doesn't really get folded down just with the day-to-day use, nor does it have like a drawstring closure where the canvas will get kind of scrunched up. But if you look at all of the bucket bag styles, just like the Petite Noe that I have, you'll be able to notice that a lot of vintage pieces have cracked canvas along the top side of the bag. But with the newer canvas, as you can see, this is made with a newer canvas. it is a lot more malleable and pliable to the point where when you close the drawstring, the canvas folds down much easier, meaning the canvas is less likely to crack over time. Another material comparison between the vintage versus new. Now, I don't know when the switchover exactly happened because I didn't pay as much attention to it, or people haven't talked about it as much, is the hardware. So if you look at the vintage Speedy 25 I have, all of the hardware on this bag is brass, and the brass does tend to tarnish over time. So you'll be able to see that there's some tarnishing on the zipper pull. There's definitely tarnishing on these rings that holds the handles and the tacks as well. But good news about brass is that even if it has tarnished, you can use a brass specific cleaner to make it shiny again. The most popular brass cleaner people use is Brasso, and I also use Brasso to clean any of the brass parts. I haven't done this with my Speedy just because the tarnishing isn't that bad, but as I use it, if I notice a lot of tarnishing, I'll definitely be cleaning it. Versus the newer bags, there's a mixed bag of hardware depending on what item you're looking for, but my Petite Noe has mixed hardware, and I will show you. This is still brass. It's very shiny and beautiful. You can see that it's a substantial hardware. And I think the rings are also brass. It's shiny. But if you look along the canvas, these little grommets here, that is not brass. That I think is gold tone hardware, and you can tell because it's matte. And so I'm trying to take a look at the grommets here, and it just wears terribly. So let me grab another SLG to show you. This is my key pouch. This has the gold tone hardware. This I think is a couple years old, but they definitely have used new hardware. You can see the zipper pull has worn completely, and it's not hardware you can just polish up and it'll look new. Once it goes, it goes. You cannot really revive the hardware, which is disappointing. So it seems that Louis Vuitton's older pieces versus new pieces have quite difference in the materials they have used. Whether something has an old canvas versus new canvas, I think it'll really depend on what you're looking at specifically to buy, because depending on the bag model, for example, with the Speedies, I prefer to have thicker canvas, much more structured canvas, versus if you're looking to buy a bucket bag style where the canvas will be scrunched up with the drawstring closure, I would prefer to have more malleable canvas, so I would prefer to have a newer model. So the materials, it's not necessarily that the old vintage pieces are much better than the new piece. It depends on what item you're looking to purchase. I would have a different recommendation and different preference. So aside from the materials, another thing to be on the lookout for is the actual design of the item. So I have two separate bags I want to kind of walk you through. So if you're looking to add a Petite Noe, like I am, there is significant design difference between the older model and the newer model. You can take a look at both of those on either on eBay, Fashion File, or any of the resale platforms. But this is a new model. It's easy to tell because it has a leather piece that goes all around the canvas towards the bottom of the bag. The vintage version of the Petite Noes do not have the leather protecting the canvas towards the bottom of the bag at all. So this is part of the reason why I decided to go for a newer model / brand new from the boutique versus buying a vintage piece from eBay, because you can get Petite Noe, the vintage models, for a really good price. But I wanted that added protection of the canvas, because once the canvas goes, Louis Vuitton will no longer repair. And because the Noes, all of them are bucket style, and the vintage pieces would be made with a thicker, more stiffer canvas, It's also well known to be the bag with cracked canvas a lot. So I wanted a more malleable canvas with additional leather to protect the canvas from wear and tear. So like Petite Noe and the new model was a right fit for me. Now, just because you want the newer model doesn't mean you have to buy it brand new. The Noes are, I think, pretty commonly found in the secondhand pre-loved market. So just be on the lookout for the new model if you want to consider Noe to be a new addition to your collection. And then the next bag I wanted to talk about is the Neverful. This is probably the most common Louis Vuitton bag that you have seen like in person. You know how bags you see on Instagram like everywhere, but then you actually go outside and then there's no one else carrying it in real life? I feel like Neverful from Louis Vuitton is actually a bag that gets carried by a lot of people in real life. And if you want to be on the lookout for the old version versus a new version, there are a couple things to be on the lookout for. Now, my 2017 version of the Louis Vuitton Neverful, it was with the redesign, but it still had old canvas. So just keep that in mind, depending on what year your bag is from. It could still have a newer redesign, but with an older canvas. I want to say 2017 prior to that year is a good year to buy from if you want the thicker canvas. I recommend thicker canvas for the Neverful because it's a bag that needs to really carry a lot with you. Now, if you don't carry a lot of stuff with you, just like that open tote style, then the newer canvas, the newer version, the most up-to-date Neverful might be a good enough of a bag for you. But because I used to carry everything with me in Neverful, I had my laptop, lunch, shoes, laptop charger, notebook, pencil case, headphones, iPad. Like I used to carry all of that in my Neverful when I used to commute to the office like 3 hours a day. I really appreciated that my Neverful had that structure from the older canvas. However, my Neverful still had the newer design. In case you guys didn't know, Neverful used to be offered without the additional pouch that it comes with. It was just an open tote style, and then you're able to tell because the interior of the Neverful design has changed. So the older model Neverful had beautiful kind of non-blocky letters like beautiful interior versus the newer model of the Neverfuls had the Louis Vuitton just kind of print logo inside. But with that, it came with a pouch with a strap attached to the bag. Is it really useful? Depends on who you ask. I did use the pouch quite a bit when I first got it, but then as I used the bag, I found pouches that fit my lifestyle more. So I don't really find pouches that useful. But just idea of adding pouches to the big bags, you can add any pouch. So if you're looking to save some money and go for a Neverful that doesn't come with a pouch, I think that's completely fine. And again, the Neverful that I had came with mixed hardware. This really broke my heart because like it tarnished really terribly. So the pouch that I had a gold toned hardware. So the zipper tarnished or zipper pull wore terribly so. And again, it's not made with brass, so it's not exactly the kind of hardware you can just polish up and then make it good as new. So that looked terrible on my pouch. I think same with the interior pocket, came with gold toned hardware. Because I used the pocket so much, it also started to show wear pretty quickly. So with the Neverful, I personally would have preferred to have the older version, which I didn't know it even was a thing when I bought Neverful. But if I were to for some reason add Neverful back to my collection again, it's no longer in my collection because I literally never use it. I don't go anywhere to carry that much stuff with me. I would actually go for an older version that comes without the pouch, better hardware and better structure to the bag. Now, when it comes down to SLGs, once again, it depends on what SLGs I'm considering. But with SLGs, I would actually prefer to buy it brand new. That's because a lot of the pieces that are canvas, vintage, they are very prone to cracking. And the SLGs sit in your bags a lot. And like my SLGs from Louis Vuitton have really seen things. And because it gets a lot of use, I'm okay with the wear on canvas in terms of the prints rubbing off, but I don't want to deal with canvas cracking. So that's why I prefer to have a lot of my SLGs with a newer canvas. However, there is an exception to SLGs that I'm okay to get vintage. And one example is the small agenda that I have. This is, I think people call it agenda PM as well. And this one doesn't have cracking along the canvas or anything like that. There's some wear on the glazing, I think, but I don't carry this often. This is going to be my travel wallet for whenever I do travel. Another reason why I would go mostly for newer SLGs with a new canvas and new hardware is because a lot of the vintage pieces would have peeling interior. On example with agenda, there are pockets here. A lot of vintage SLGs will have peeling interior. Actually, same with the bags as well, because they used to have, I think, kind of coated canvas for speedy pockets. So it's very common for the pockets to be peeling. Mine doesn't have that issue, but that is very, very common. So with SLGs, I actually prefer the newer canvas. Newer hardware, I don't really prefer, but I'm okay with the hardware shrink because they really get used every day. Versus cracking of a canvas is not something that I'm willing to risk with SLGs that see a lot of things. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys found this somewhat entertaining and helpful. And like I've mentioned, I want to cover more of like shopping tips with like vintage pieces on the pre-loved market, or maybe non-vintage, just pre-loved pieces in general in my paid membership part of my channel. So I'll leave all of that information in the description box down below, and I'll be sharing a lot of the items that are like such a good deal that if you're on the lookout for something specific that you should jump on. I'll be sharing a lot of that on my membership as well. So thank you so much for watching today's video, and please be on the lookout for my future content.